Now it was some time ago now, 3 or 4 years ago, I was travelling to a Gurdjieff conference in Greece. And by chance on the way there, on the aeroplane, I was sat next to a Greek gentleman, a Greek sailor. Now this might have been a bit alarming, but he was, in turn, sat next to his wife, a lady from Scotland, a Scottish lady. And on the journey we began to talk, to chat. Of course they asked me where I was going and what I was doing. I said I was going to a Gurdjieff conference. And by chance, these coincidences that do arise, the gentleman's wife had actually read Gurdjieff. And I asked her, did you read the book Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson? No, she said. I don't think it was that book. She said it was a book about Gurdjieff's life and Gurdjieff travelling around Asia into various schools and monasteries. And I suggested to her that it was the book Meetings with the Remarkable Men. And she said, yes, that was the book. She'd read that book, and it had made an impression upon her. And we continued on our way, me to the conference, and they to their home nearby. And it was a coincidence, just a coincidence. Now this is the third talk in a series. In the first talk, I explained how Gurdjieff has written Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, his first book, in order to transform us from the ordinary men and women that we now are into normal men and women as we should be, as we in fact imagine that we are. And in the second talk of this series, I talked about the two great forces, as it were, in the universe. The force of introspection, looking within, and the force of perception, looking without and connecting with the outside world. How one drags us down and one lifts us up. And we are constantly engaged in a struggle between these two forces. The third talk in this series, this talk, I planned to talk about the fundamental division that Gurdjieff introduces in his first book, Beelzebub's Tales to his grandson, between the two consciousnesses of man. Gurdjieff in that book says that man has two relatively independent consciousnesses having nothing in common. And the third talk was, I planned to talk about this. However, I have been instructed that actually the third talk in this series is about something else. There is an important fact to make clear in this third talk. And this third talk is therefore about the book, Gurdjieff's second book, Meetings with Remarkable Men. My speciality, or at least one of my specialities, and something I enjoy immensely, is comparing the Gurdjieff tradition, what is said and written about Gurdjieff, with what Gurdjieff himself actually wrote. And it might seem a minor, insignificant activity in the midst of the world, the modern world that we live in, but it's important that someone pursues it, just as you, with your own specialities, no matter how insignificant they may seem in the grand picture, pursue them. Because if each of us pursues our own speciality, then the world is so much richer, and it does make a big difference. And so my speciality, if you like, is this difference between what's said about Gurdjieff and what Gurdjieff himself actually wrote. Now I remember a long time ago, when I was a younger man, the film version of Meetings with Remarkable Men came out. And I remember watching this. I must have been a young man, say in my early 40s, because I remember I had children, a wife and children, and was therefore far too busy to follow any sort of Gurdjieff teaching at that time. But I remember watching this film, and there was something was said in that film which I knew was totally untrue. A statement was made in that film that I knew was totally untrue. At the time I didn't have a great deal of time to pursue this and to see whether this was a fault in those who produced the film, made the film, or whether this was something Gurdjieff himself had actually said. But of course, having pursued it in the interim, I realised that a statement was made in that film that is totally, totally untrue, and it is not a statement that Gurdjieff himself made or would have made.
There is a law. The quality of what you understand depends upon the quality of the person speaking.
There exists a law that the quality of what is perceived by anyone when another person tells him something depends upon the quality of the data formed in the person speaking. And to say anything other than this would be simply Cant. C-A-N-T.
Father Giovanni, how can you stay here instead of returning to Italy and giving the people there something of the faith which you are now inspiring in me?
Ah, Professor, you do not understand man's psyche as well as you know archaeology. Faith cannot be given to men. Faith is not the result of thinking. It comes from direct knowledge. For example, if my own brother were to entreat me to give him a 10th part of my understanding, I could not. As he has neither the knowledge nor the experience which I have acquired in my life. This would be like wishing to fill someone with bread merely by looking at him. There is a law. The quality of what you understand depends upon the quality of the person speaking. In our order, we have two very old brethren. The one is called Brother Arl, the other Brother Says. They constantly travel from one monastery to another, preaching there. Once or twice a year they come to us. This is always a very great event.
When Brother Says speaks, it is like the song of the birds in paradise.
Brother Arl's speech has almost the opposite effect. He speaks badly, indistinctly.
The stronger the impression made by Brother Says, the quicker it evaporates until there is nothing left. Brother Arl makes almost no impression, but what he says penetrates into the heart and remains there.
So we all came to the conclusion that the sermons of Brother Says came entirely from his mind and acted only on our minds, whereas those of Brother Arl came directly from his being and acted on our being.
Yes, Professor. Thinking and knowing are quite different. One must strive to know. This alone can lead to our Lord God.
I am, of course, in something of a privileged position here, at the centre of the international film world and the film community, constantly flying between London, Los Angeles, and of course here in Middlesbrough. I have even myself been called something of an impresario. At least I think that was the word used. And being, of course, something of an international impresario, I therefore have the opportunity to invite here two of the stars of the film, Meetings with a Remarkable Man, to discuss this crucial passage. And it's with this in mind I welcome my guests, Dragan Maksimovic and the other one. Welcome. Now, we're here to discuss this crucial passage in this film, Meetings with Remarkable Men. And it starts off well. You, the other one, as Professor Skridlov, asked the question of Father Giovanni. Why is it that Father Giovanni does not return to his home country of Italy to preach the faith that he is now inspiring in you? This is in agreement with the book and begins this section of the film. And the response is correct. Father Giovanni replies, faith cannot be given to man. But here, instead of beginning this crucial part of the book with the phrase that is in the book, faith comes from understanding, which is the whole point of this book, Meetings with Remarkable Men. instead of beginning this section with this simple expression, faith comes from understanding, Father Giovanni then exclaims, faith does not come from thinking, faith comes from direct knowledge. Now, why is it that this simple phrase in the book, faith comes from understanding, has been changed into this rather bizarre phrase, faith does not come from thinking, faith comes from direct knowledge? Why do you think that this was changed? And then we have the situation, in the book at least, faith comes from understanding. And it's a reasonable assumption that at this point there would be some sort of explanation of what this understanding is. Now, in the book, Gurdjieff gives actually two succinct definitions of understanding. And it would be reasonable to insert at this point in the film one of these expressions, such as, understanding is the essence obtained from information intentionally acquired and from experiences personally experienced. In this way, the viewer of the film would have some idea of what it is, this understanding that leads to faith. Why was this crucial explanation not given in the film? We then arrive at again an extraordinary statement, which I must say struck me at the time as completely wrong, where one of the brothers, with Father Giovanni, says, there is a law that the quality of what you understand depends upon the quality of the person speaking. Well, it's patently untrue. And yet in the book, there is a perfectly reasonable corresponding expression, that there exists a law that the quality of what is perceived when another person tells somebody something depends upon the quality of the data formed in the person speaking. Now, why was it that one false statement, there exists a law that the quality of what is understood depends upon the quality of the person speaking? Why was this false statement placed in the film instead of the equally succinct, true statement that is in the book? And then we come to the crucial and final concluding section, where Father Giovanni in the book, continuing or concluding even this theme of understanding, says, one must strive to understand. This alone can lead to our Lord God. And yet, in the film, we arrive at this concluding section, and Father Giovanni concludes with the most extraordinary statement that seems completely out of context in the light of the distinction that Gurdjieff has always made between knowledge and understanding. Father Giovanni in the film says, one must strive to know. This alone can lead to our Lord God. And so we have in the book, one must strive to understand, which follows the theme of this section, and in fact the whole meaning of the book. And yet in the film there is this statement, one must strive to know. This alone can lead to our Lord God. Why is there this change in the book? What explanation can you give for this? And so there we have it. My thanks to Dragan Maximovich and to you, the other one, for your clear and succinct explanations of these anomalies. Father Giovanni, I cannot understand how you can calmly stay here instead of returning to Europe, at least to your own country, Italy, to give the people there, if only 1,000th part of this all-penetrating faith which you are now inspiring in me. Ah, my dear Professor, it is evident that you do not understand man's psyche as well as you understand archaeology. Faith cannot be given to man. Faith arises in man from understanding. Understanding is the essence obtained from information intentionally learned and from all kinds of experiences personally experienced. It is impossible to give to another one's own inner understanding. For example, if my own brother here were to entreat me to give him even 1/10th part of my understanding, I could not do so, for he has neither the knowledge nor the experience that I have had in my life. This would be like trying to fill someone with bread merely by looking at them. There exists a law that the quality of what is perceived by anyone when another person tells him something depends on the quality of the data formed in the person speaking. In our order, we have two very old brethren. One is called Brother Arl, the other Brother Says. They constantly travel from one monastery to another, preaching there. Once or twice a year they come to us. This is always a very great event. When Brother Says speaks, it is like the song of the birds in paradise. Brother Arl's speech has almost the opposite effect. He speaks badly and indistinctly. the stronger the impression made by Brother Says, the quicker it evaporates until there is nothing left. Brother Arl makes almost no impression, but what he says penetrates into the heart and remains there. And so we all came to the conclusion that the sermons of Brother Says come entirely from his mind and acted only on our minds, whereas those of Brother Arl came directly from his being and acted on our being. And so the question is, my dear Professor, how do we change that quality of data in us from the understanding of the mind of Brother Says into that understanding of being of Brother Arl? It is a question that doesn't even enter the mind of the ordinary man. One must strive to understand. This alone can lead to our Lord God. However, because the film version of Meetings with Remarkable Men was so different from what Gurdjieff himself had actually written, by comparing the two, I was able to come to some conclusions about this book. What is this book about? What is Meetings with Remarkable Men about? Well, Gurdjieff says it is about the transmutation of faith in oneself. Now, what does this mean? Faith comes, Gurdjieff says, from understanding. These are the words of Father Giovanni in the book. Faith comes from understanding. Now we have two minds. We have our ordinary consciousness and we have our true consciousness. And Gurdjieff is talking here about our true consciousness, our true mind, the understanding obtained by that true mind, which is the understanding of Brother Says. But there is another kind of understanding, the understanding of Brother R, which is actually the understanding that leads to faith. And this book is therefore about the transmutation in oneself of faith. That is to say, the transmutation, the refinement, the change in oneself in understanding. The change from the understanding of the mind, of our true mind, the understanding of Brother Says, into the understanding of being, the understanding of Brother R. Now, neither of these involve our ordinary mind, our ordinary consciousness. And neither of these things are anywhere in the awareness of the ordinary man. And so it's only after reading Beelzebub's tales to his grandson that we are able to even begin to suspect the existence of what Gurdjieff calls these subtly philosophical questions. And the question is, how do we transform the understanding of the mind of Brother Says into the understanding of being, the understanding of Brother R? How do we change the quality of the data in us? Hence the significance of the stories about Brother R and Brother Says. Hence the significance of the true saying in Meetings with Remarkable Men, that it is about the quality of the data in the person speaking. because Gurdjieff is talking about how do we transform the understanding of the mind into the understanding of being. And that transformation is what this whole book is about. And it is a question, a subtly philosophical question, Gurdjieff says, that has never even entered the consciousness of the ordinary man, let alone as a question, let alone as a debate, let alone as an answer. How do we transform the understanding of the mind, what Brother says, into the understanding of being, the understanding of Brother R, that we might as a result grow in faith. One must strive to understand. This alone can lead to our Lord God. And so thanks to this error in the part of the film, I personally was able to come to some conclusions about this book. Now, equally, because of this error in the film, there are certain other conclusions that we can also arrive at. And one of them is that those people who made this film did not know what this book was about. They did not know that this book as a whole was about this transmutation of faith in oneself, this change in understanding, this change in the quality of the data, from the understanding of the mind into the understanding of being. The understanding of Brother Says transmuted into the understanding of Brother R. Those who made this book, this film rather, did not know that that was what this book was about. They did not know what Gurdjieff was teaching. And that is quite a strong statement, because these were people making this film at a fairly high level as Gurdjieff pupils in Gurdjieff societies and Gurdjieff foundations. They did not understand, they did not know what this book, Meetings with Remarkable Men, was about. And the other conclusion I reach, if you remember, travelling to a Gurdjieff conference, I met a Greek sailor and his Scottish wife, and she had read Meetings with Remarkable Men and enjoyed it as an autobiographical tale about Gurdjieff and his early life and his search and his visits to various places in Asia. And she was satisfied with that, as are most, if not all, Gurdjieff people.